listening to the NFL Draft Bible Podcast Network, part of Sports Illustrated, giving you daily NFL Draft, Dynasty, and Devy Fantasy Football podcasts.
Class is in session. Welcome into the draft seminar presented by Sports Illustrated's NFL Draft Bible Podcast Network. I am your host, Matt Hicks, the FF Educator, joined as always by my co-host, John Lobb, the Gridiron Scholar. And this is perhaps one of the most difficult to evaluate running back prospects of this entire draft class, and that is Trey Sermon, originally out of Oklahoma, but he spent his final collegiate season at Ohio State. John, I imagine you are very excited to break down Trey Sermon.
I am, my friend, and I have to be honest. He has risen up my rankings a lot in the last 2 weeks. I've studied his background in more detail, and I went back to the film at Oklahoma. I've been watching some of his game tape from freshman year at Oklahoma. I'm much more impressed right now than I am even when we talked about him at the Senior Bowl or when I saw him in the playoff game against Clemson. In high school, he was a 4-star recruit by ESPN, Rivals, and Scout, and he was a number 8 running back in the nation. When he enrolls at Oklahoma, Matt, this is a pretty good locker room. Remember Rodney Anderson? Rodney Anderson was a darling in the Dynasty community. He was there. If you don't remember the name, Abdul Adams was a prospect that many in the college fantasy football industry, they liked him. Kennedy Brooks was there. Ramondre Stevenson shows up on campus at one point. Trey Sermon had a lot of competition in Oklahoma. Also, look at the dual threat quarterbacks he played with. Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, and Jalen Hurts. It's not like Trey Sermon was getting Jonathan Taylor workload at Oklahoma. He's got running quarterbacks who are taking goal line carries, and they're handling a substantial amount of the running duties. So I needed to go back. When I realized all that, I said, I need to go back. 2017, he was all Big 12 honorable mention for Offensive Freshman of the Year. He was second on the team in rushing yards with 744 and 5 touchdowns. I went back to watch the game against Georgia in the playoffs. I forgot Trey Sermon was on the field against the Bulldogs in that game, and he packed a punch. And then it reminded me why I was so high on him in college fantasy football the next year. But he just didn't reach. I had him as a top 6 runner. He was very good, but he wasn't that good. In 2018, he was all Big 12 honorable mention. He played in 14 games. He made 12 starts. He led the Sooners with 947 yards, Matt, and 13 touchdowns. I mean, you're talking at the end of his sophomore year. Trey Sermon is a really good prospect on a really good team. 2019, he got injured versus Iowa State. He only gained 385 yards and 4 touchdowns. That's also the year with Jalen Hurts when he went incredibly bonkers. He ended up as an academic all Big 12. So when I looked at the film and studied him at Oklahoma, he was much more impressive than I thought. He rambled for over 2,000 yards in 3 seasons as a Sooner. Then he takes a huge gamble on himself. I'm impressed. He heads north to Ohio State. And unfortunately for the young man, COVID hit. And the Big Ten canceled originally. Then they postponed the season. So Trey Sermon got a real late start in his Buckeye uniform. But he ended up rushing for 870 yards and 4 touchdowns this year at Ohio State. He was the big game championship MVP. You want to see 2 games of his ceiling, folks. watch the freshman year against Georgia, and watch the Big Ten championship game against Northwestern. That's his ceiling. He had 331 yards and 2 touchdowns. In the semifinal game against Clemson, he was almost as impressive with 193 yards rushing, 4 receptions for 61 yards. Unfortunately, he got hurt against Alabama. I think it was the second carry, right, Matt? First series for Ohio State. Matt, I've really liked Trey Sermon a lot more as I've looked at him and studied him in more detail. What's your film analysis say?
Yeah, John, I think you're probably a little bit more excited about Trey Sermon than I am. I come to his tape with a bit of disappointment because I had high expectations for him transferring to the Ohio State system. In my tape review has both Oklahoma and Ohio State tape in it. And for me, he is somebody he's really good, or he's good at almost everything. I don't see him being elite or excellent at anything, and that's difficult when you translate that to the NFL. So I have him projected as a flex filler. I expect him to sit as a productive member of a running back by committee situation at the next level, which can lead to fantasy football relevancy if somebody goes down or you work your way into higher volume. But we'll start here, John, with vision. I think he has solid vision. At times, he finds holes and he works really well in between the tackles in tight spots. Other times, he tries to do a little bit too much. He'll try to extend the play. He'll be a little bit too patient behind the line of scrimmage, and he'll even juke himself out at times, trying to change direction a little bit too quickly. So again, at times, good vision. Other times, trying to do too much. The speed is on display at times. He has really good acceleration, but I find that he rarely purely turns upfield and runs north to south, which limits the acceleration and speed that I can see from you on tape. He's got solid strength to his game. He'll fight forward. He's aggressive. He's not afraid to lower his shoulder. He always falls forward, which I really like, but he stays a little bit too upright when running the ball. That lowers his leverage point, and it makes it so that although he's a little bit bigger of a back, he doesn't push Big Ten defenders as hard or as far as I would like to see upon contact. And I like his athleticism. He's got that iconic hurdle that we love over the Northwestern player. He's a fluid runner. He's smooth in space, but I mentioned it earlier. At times, he's almost too athletic, or he moves too quick for his own body. He'll juke himself out of his own shoes. He doesn't exactly have great body control, which I don't love from a running back prospect. But John, the good, the bad, everything in between. Let's flip on some tape here and really get into it.
I look forward to it, my friend.
All right, as always, provided by Brandon Lejeune, Devy Deep Dive on YouTube and Twitter. And you can see right off the bat here some pass catching ability coming out here. And that hurdle, he almost gets up and fully over the Clemson defender, but no doubt his vertical ability is strong. And you can see here on this next play against Clemson, John, that strength, that tenacity to his game. He will fight forward, but you saw he really only got a little bit more.
Oh, absolutely. He does at times leave you wanting more. I agree with that. Like, I feel like he could be transcendent. He just never actually gets there for whatever reason. And here's the tape against Northwestern.
And you could see here against Northwestern, he was patient. And the hole opened up for him. He bursted through it. And so everything came together well on that play. That's the upside here for Trey Sermon. It's about a 30-yard run. And you can see here, he's demonstrating some good contact balance at times, and he's speeding up. He's accelerating, but not to an overly impressive degree.
No, he's definitely not a sprinter. There's no question about that. But he's 6'0", 213 pounds. I'd like to see him pack a better punch, Matt. Absolutely, my friend.
John, run us through his production profile.
It looks pretty good. The thing I was first amazed about, 6.5 yards per carry. Now, that comes off because he has a couple really big runs, and that game against Northwestern pops up the average. But the young man does gain chunks of yards for you. Pleasantly surprised. 48 career receptions, so he can be used in the passing game. He's an above-average pass catcher. Clearly, he is not in that Najee Harris, Travis Etienne bucket. He's not even close, but he can catch the football. 2,944 career rushing yards, 3,432 career yards from scrimmage. Last year for the Buckeyes, with Justin Fields on the team, yards from scrimmage, 963, and a 25% scrimmage yards dominator. I wonder, he has always played with dual threat quarterbacks. I feel like he might be the perfect match for Josh Allen in Buffalo. He would fit into the system. They could use a big back with more explosiveness. I do have him graded higher than Zach Moss when Zach Moss came out of Utah. We've seen Singletary for 2 years. I think he's a rotational back. Just a thought. I think Trey Sermon's going to be relying on which team drafts him and where. I do see a big ceiling, and I believe with the way that the NFL has seen Derrick Henry, they're going to see a little bit of that in Trey Sermon, and they're going to like his ability to play with a running quarterback. I think there's skills here. I'm excited to see the landing spot. I've grown to like him more over the last 2 weeks, Matt.
All right, there you have it. Trey Sermon, the running back out of Ohio State. You can put those pencils down because this episode is over. As always, we appreciate you listening. Make sure you go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. And if you are watching on YouTube, please make sure to give the video